And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching in the world, and welcome to the Company of Makers YouTube channel, where today we prepare ourselves for the land final of of the Armed Forces Racing League, of course brought to you by the company of makers in partner with the Atlassian Williams F1 team. Today we've got two races upcoming. The first one starting at 11 a.m. till 12, and then the second race being between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Of course, some of you might be sitting thinking, well, what is the company of makers? What do we do and how do we help people? Well, this charity is all here for the veterans of serving personnel, servists and veterans of the armed forces in the UK. And of course, we're here as part of the Get in the Game project, which brings games with our veterans and just helps them kind of see a bit of a limelight for their futures, especially with some of them having lots of conditions when serving in the armed forces. And we are here at a landfall. All of our drivers are at the Williams East Lounge, where they're all in their rigs getting set up and ready to race for their first race of the morning, where we have 50% race. So if you're not sure what that is, it's basically a 26-lap race around Silverstone, half of what you will get on a normal F1 weekend, and it is based on the F1 25 game. And of course, we've got here the drivers had a lot of preparation. Firstly, they had to do a time, which was around Suzuka. They had multiple weeks to submit it, and then of course entered into the actual racing league, where they took part in 6 races, consisting of Zandvoort, Kota, Imola, Spa, and the Hungaroring, and then of course prepare for that final event here at the Williams Esports Lounge, where we have Silverstone first, and then Ron, a perfect way to end off and of course to crown our Armed Forces Racing Champion. We head to Abu Dhabi, which of course we're heading to in real life tomorrow for the Formula 1 2025 World Championship. In just under a minute's time, at the top left of your screen, we are going to get underway for qualifying. It's a one-shot qualifying, so you have one lap only, and then of course that will form up the grid for the main race. And the standings-wise, we're not going to follow them that much today. We're mainly looking at crowning our sole winner of the final race, but things to me suggest it's going to be close. The top 6 currently are separated by 35 points, and the top 16 are separated by just over 100. There's a lot of action. We've got a lot of competitive drivers who have either took podiums and wins pretty much every race in the league so far, so we'll see what they can do, and hopefully we'll be heading our way into the qualifying session very, very short. Of course, this Get in the Game project is brought to us by the Armed Forces Common Trust, so of course big thanks to those for helping fund this series. And then of course we are going to head into qualifying very shortly. Of course, Silverstone, very tricky track. It might be a track that everybody drives a lot. It's pretty much in every sort of sim racing game or racing you can imagine, but it's still not an easy track. It's very easy to lose the car, especially in these very powerful V6 engined Formula 1 cars. So it's going to be a task to get the car around the track in one piece. And of course, that all depends as well on what sort of assists you'll do, because drivers have many different assists that you can use in the F1 game. You've got ABS, traction control, you've got the brake assist, steering assist, obviously stop being able to some will, and of course that could definitely hamper or maybe help some drivers, as we are having a slight delay before we head our way into the qualifying session. So we will be heading in very shortly, I promise, and then of course we can see what the drivers are going to get up to. But another thing to note as well, drivers are probably going to be on very different rigs or different setups to what they use at home. Of course, some of them might race on controller. Don't imagine there'll be many on keyboard. I couldn't imagine that being a fun experience, but I'm sure there's, well, some drivers that have their main rigs with the sim racing equipment. Of course, Williams have 20 rigs that they'll all be on, which are all the same layout. You know, everybody got the equal machinery, so we'll have to see how quickly they adapt to that new rig. Of course, his first race isn't as important. This one's more of a, a pace setter, getting drivers settled into the cars, and then of course I can go all out hopefully for the which we'll have later on. Of course, a quick reminder, this race will begin very shortly, will end 12 p.m, UK time, then back again at 4 p.m, and that should end around 5. So we will have a bit of a break in the middle. We will go off air, but we will come back on afterwards as well. So when I say don't go anywhere, I mean you can, because you've got a long to wait, but make sure you get back for just before 4 o'clock evening. Now we're getting started very shortly. We had a slight delay, but of course that's expected with all these land finals. Things that behind the scenes have to get sorted out, and of course with it being technology, it's never the most reliable at all. I mean, I know that for certain, but of course what we'll do is we'll have a quick chat about Abu Dhabi, another very tricky track. I mean, I play the F1 game quite a lot. Abu Dhabi, I hate to drive it because I'm not good at the final corner. I always miss it and I go straight on. Turn 1, I always hit the curb and spin. Fun time if you're not good at the game, but I'm sure these drivers will find a very track. Of course, it's one of those where qualifying matters because the DRS isn't as powerful as it is around some, and of course you don't always get that run to go for a move. So around Abu Dhabi later on, qualifying is going to be very important, whereas here at Silverstone for the first race, I think it will matter. You know, I think it'll give you confidence if you can buy into that top 5, but if not, it just means you can spend a little bit more time preparing yourself and potentially scrapping off Silverstone and thinking, right, let's see what we can do now, and if there's anything that I've got issues with or anything that I can't quite get right, I'm now ready for Abu Dhabi. So they've got that thing ironed out, because if not, there could be some trouble with the drivers. But as I got told earlier on, there's around 4 or 5 drivers that are above the rest. So they'll be the main ones to focus on as we head our way into race. And of course we'll have to see what they can do. I'm sure they'll do a brilliant job later on. And of course the rest being quite a big factor in Formula Car, especially in Formula 1. That's something that the drivers have to focus on once we get our way into the races. Timing when to timing when to use that battery, of course using that in conjunction with the DRS to make your moves into some of the big heavy corners such as Brooklands. You've got the Vale chicane as well. You've also turn 3, if you can sometimes have a good enough of a run through turn 2, and then of course Stowe corner. A bit more difficult to make a move there because on followed that well through the corners prior, but you never know. If you get a good run, there's always opportunity on the cards. As we are still waiting to get in. I'm sure we won't be too long because, yes, we've still got some technical difficulties. And of course, we'll have a quick look at the standings yet again. So, from what I see, some was 75, it was 74 for P2 and 73 for P3. And our top driver has, in quotation, Nemesis Gaming, who is going to be under the real name in this event, has taken a P1, P3, P2, P2, P1. So once I find out who Nemesis Gaming is, I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on them. They could maybe going for 3 wins on the baits, of course. Last time in Spa and Hungaroring, where they took and a win. And then as well, looking down into the top 10, a lot of drivers, most drivers into the high 60s and the low 70s of points. And of course, the main heading into event where the pressure's kind of on you a lot more, even though you're not fighting for much in terms of physical praise. It's still about that pride, and of course, if you can be consistent online, you can always do the exact same to LAN. And of course, some of those that might be a little bit further down the standings have a bit of an opportunity to move that. They are quick enough to be in that top 20, and they can challenge into that top 10. As yes, of course, calendar-wise, I think it's been a bit difficult for the drivers because Suzuka, Japan, not an easy track on this game in the F1 25. It tends to be quite slider. You tend to not have the most tracks because of the way the setups are designed around there. Zandvoort, a track which you cannot overtake at all, really. It's very difficult. So your only opportunity is turn 1 and potentially to chicane at the end of set 2 if you've got the speed down that straight, but that's still very rare indeed, as we are seeing a pan of the Silverstone circuit, and I'm hoping that's into me that we are getting our way into qualifying, as it will of course be a one-shot qualification, so 1 lap and that is it. So you've got to kind of set your pace early, and sometimes it's not always worth going for that full push lap. sometimes if you know there's a few corners which can catch you out, where you can run a bit deep, maybe lose the car, you could maybe shave a tenth off there, just make sure you can get yourself through the corner, because there's going to be a lot of drivers that invade, especially in the middle and third sector. So of course, just getting that lap that is consistent over all three sectors in, and then of course you can make it into hopefully the top 10 of qualifying, which is taking you into the race, is a perfect to qualifying, as we can see some beautiful pansia of the Silverstone circuit. Of course, the home of British motorsport. For many, it's the motorsport, but of course, you've got many different motorsport categories that underlie that. You've got your Formula 1, your IndyCar. They all claim to have the home of motorsport, but Silverstone is definitely those up there. And a quick thing as well is everybody will be in the same livery, pretty much. It will be Williams livery that they all have put on at the Williams Esports Lounge. So be surprised when you see every car look the same. That's just the way everything is. We do have us on track, and we'll have keep an eye here on Barnhurst, who is currently in P1, but of course that can change very quickly over this one-shot qualifying. We'll go on board now as he heads his way down in towards Brooklands corner. Telemetry on as well. Stay to fourth gear, which make your way through there, and then of course it's all about getting the power on as you head in towards Luffield wide line. Then you can cut back to the inside on the exit, and then of course you head to the right at Woodcote down the National Pitch straight, and then of course into very infamous Cops corner. Of course it's pretty much flat all the way through there, not really corner in Formula 1 nowadays. And then of course next up is Maggots and Beckett, another difficult section of track. My name here is just to keep a consistent time through there, as we popped away from the cars, and I hope it's a technical thing, and we'll see them again shortly. But of course, that was just a bit of a taste, wasn't it, as well, of what this track's like. And you've got that middle sector where you've got a really difficult Luffield corner where we have a restart. So there was an issue for somebody there, it seems. So we're gonna hopefully get back underway again shortly. But of course, as we saw there with Luke from around turn 5 down towards turn 10, it was. Of course, you've got a long run with DRS towards Brooklands where you can sometimes have an opportunity to overtake. But of course, it's very risky there because it's to send someone wide just because of the trajectory of the corner. And then, of course, you have Luffield, the right-hander, which you have to take a very wide line into, just so you can good exit. Of course, that launches you up through the little kink at Woodcote in towards Cops Corner. I think in the F1 game isn't that much of a corner. You kind of tilt the wheel a little bit and the car feeds itself through. It's a little bit more of a corner in a real Formula 1 car, that is safe to say. And then, of course, you have some Beckett's parts of the track where you kind of have to sacrifice the first bit of the section just so you can get a good exit, because yet again, on top speed, having a good exit out of a corner matters so much. So you've got to sacrifice that first bit of corner. And then, of course, you head down toward another DRS zone, then the hangar streets, and and then you have, of course, the final couple of corners, Vale and Club, and then you head to the line. And I think, yet again, that's another corner to mention, or couple of corners, is Vale and Club. Very keen. Then, of course, you head into that final right-hander, and there's a very mean curb waiting before the line, which cashes a lot of drivers out because you kind of turn the car to go through, you hop that curb, the car bounces and go. But normally, you do have enough speed carried through that you just shoot across the line sideways or backward. So if anybody does get caught out there, maybe the speed they carry through could save them in that one. And of course, we can see the Vale chicane and then in towards Club Corner on our picture now. And then to the right of the Vale chicane, we have lane. And around most tracks, you have an 80 kph limit. And of course, if you go over that, you get given a time penalty. Well, I presume it's to do with how tight the pit lane is. I'm not really sure. But Silverstone, 80 kph. And I cannot count on my fingers how many times I've seen drivers go into that pit lane, go for 80, and boom, they get a 10-second penalty. Done it too many times. And I did it I was leading on the game as well. So that was quite annoying, to say the least. So hopefully the drivers remember that it's only 60 kph in the pit, not 80. I think there's only a couple of the tracks which are limited to 60. I think Canada might be one. I think Monaco is definitely one. and then I'm sure there's a couple that I've missed. Funnily enough, I don't have the most information on pit lane speed with me. But yes, I'm sure there's a couple of tracks which you are limited to that lower speed. The pit lane. And we are just getting restarted, so don't go there, guys. We should be back very, very shortly. And of course, a big hello, everybody, in the YouTube chat. We have Wizard Llama saying, good luck, Carl. Rooting for you from LF. Good luck to Carl. I remember seeing a Carl in the lobby earlier on, so of course we'll give a shout out to Carl once we get him on track. As yes, of course, guys, say hello, say who you're here to support, and yeah, we should get underway very, very shortly. As of course we can see the beautiful views of Silverstone, a track that I've actually been to a couple of times as well, and it's a great spectacle. Many different views you can get from every corner around the circuit. So if you ever are by and there's a race weekend on, always make sure to head in and have a look. It is a really nice track and definitely one weekend you go to. And then, of course, we'll have a quick reminder for those who are new here about what the company of makers do. It is a social enterprise which helps veterans, serving personnel and reservists in the armed forces. And the Get in the Game project is our gaming one. How we bring everybody together through the power of gaming, which is so key. And gaming is a key for many different sorts of social enterprise and non-for-profit organisations. It helps bring people together, and it's great to have an event like this for our gamers who have served and serve in the forces. And of course, the company of makers do their On the Line podcast, which is on every week they speak to served or serving in the armed forces, speaking about their experiences, and of course that first of all helps them get things off this, but also helps people with maybe similar feelings and similar experiences kind of feel. Well, it's a very key thing. People in the armed forces go through some very extreme conditions for many different reasons. It's great that they can have somewhere to talk and tell people what they've gone through in their past lives. And I'm looking at the chat, and there's a lot more names coming through. We have good luck to Adam Cooper. He's got a lot of fans. We've got Ollie, Badgerman, George as well saying good luck, Adam Cooper. We've got Mike Evans saying good luck to Luke Barnhurst. Another Capiers says Carl Mayers. And then, of course, Christopher Sunderland says this is such a good... It certainly is, and I'm great, and I'm pleasured to be here as part of the commentary team. And I don't think you mentioned him earlier on. I am Nathan Richards. It isn't on the screen. I think it was meant to be, but it's not. So, yes, Nathan Richards. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here this afternoon. And, of course, you see Thomas saying good luck, John, from Tom and Jamie. And then, of course, Amy saying good luck to C. Great to see so much support in the chat for our driver this afternoon, well, this morning, and we're slowly heading our way towards the afternoon. Of course, it is 7:15 in the UK. I'm sure we've got many of you from overseas. So, of course, hello to all of you, whether it's morning, the afternoon, evening, you are, it's an honour to have you in with us. And, of course, if anybody doesn't read the title, we are here for the Armed Racing League LAN final, and the drivers had to go through a very extensive qualifying process to get to the finals. Of course, they started with their time trial laps, which were around Suzuka, which involved of probably doing flashbacks, returning to the pit lane, changing your setup and going again, but not. And then, of course, they went to their racing calendar where they took part in 6 races before these final 2 events. Of course, they went to Suzuka, Kota, Imola, Spa, and the Hungaroring. Very difficult calendar. Of course, as Zandvoort, Imola, and Hungaroring, tracks that are very easy to mess up at, tracks that are difficult to find, but also, crucially, tracks that you can't really overtake at. So, of course, those 4 there would be all about preparing their drives for their general bar that then they're overtaking. And then, of course, we also Kota and Spa as well. Tracks that are a little bit more gentle when it comes for to actual racing. Of course, Kota, you've got so many opportunities to make moves. Same for Spa as well, of the longest track. The calendar, and then, of course, after all of that, we have our final 2 races. Silverstone is first, and then, like I said earlier on, we're not really focusing that much on the league standing, just because we want to be able to crown a winner. And at the end of that will be whoever wins in Abu Dhabi. His first race is a bit of a a practice race. Get yourself settled into your brand new rigs. Of course, some of them might never have driven on a rig. And of course, believe me, switching from controller to rig to wheel, so difficult. And it's very weird experience. Of course, instead of having a controller which you've got to hope does the work, you've got a wheel which reacts to every movement you do. So, of course, that is very difficult for the drivers to get used to. Of course, to anybody that is switching equipment, I feel for you. But I've got a 26-lap race at Silverstone to get you settled into the mood. And then, of course, explained earlier, well, we have a very close championship standings. The top 16 were separated by 100. In most leagues, it's normally the top 4 or 5 that are separated by 100 points. So, brilliant job by the drivers to be so consistent in their, and that's something that's going to help us and help them today as well. Being consistent. If you make a mistake at the start, it's about getting that pace set down and just pushing and pushing. As we have some more viewers in the chats, we've got Good Luck Flemdog, we've got Good Luck John from Edith, go on JDQ, and in other words, go on John. We've got Good Luck James, aka The Asset. We'll see if I can fit that one in anywhere, Carl. We'll try and get The Asset in. And then, of course, we have Let's Go Coops. But we have, finally, our cars out on track. We're on board here with Mike Lake as he heads his way down towards the Brooklands corner. Of course, DRS open down the Lincoln Straight. Get the car turned in, hit the apex on the side of Brooklands. Then it's Luffield next. Of course, you can keep a tight line or go wide. It's up to you. All matters what you put on the exit of the corner as you head down towards Woodcut and then towards Cox. Of course, through here you can pretty much go flat out. As you can see, Michael there, he shifts down vision braking, but he didn't actually lose the throttle or apply the brake. And then it's in towards Magak. It's a very difficult section. You've got to carry such minimum speed through here. And then on the exit you have Chapel, and then if you have that long hanger straight in towards Stowe Corner. Because of the run and the speed you carry through Maggots and Beckett, you don't always get a run down towards Stowe. But if it's ever given to go for it, it's a perfect corner to make an overtake. And then, of course, we head into the Val Chicane, hop the second, and then you have Club. And you'll see that infamous red curb, that sausage curb there. Don't hit that. To be qualifying, and it will be Ben Cooper who takes that pole position with a 1 minute 27.68 lap from him. And then look at the gap there between Fitz and Story, only 50 thousandths of a second. That is exactly half a tenth between second and third. And then we have the rest of our drivers forming to the grid behind as well. And of course, if you are to Formula One and racing, whatever position they qualify here is the position they was in the race in a very short moment. So we'll read through the grid quickly. Of course, it was Cooper on pole ahead of Harry Phoenix. Then we had Thomas Story, Robert Pryor and Edward George Fleming 5. Then it was Michael Bentley, Adam Hamilton Cooper, Tommy Dolly, Morgan Stubbs and James Cartwright reigning top. Then the remainder of the drivers, we had Oliver Carter, Tom Packham, James Smith, Gary Wilson, and then hopefully we'll be able to scroll down and see the other drivers. But that is the top 14 heading into the race. It's Cooper from Phoenix. The top 2 will quickly be able to scroll down. We have Barnhurst, Quirk, Nelson, and then Craig Bridge. And it seems 2 of them there did get a DSQ, which is certainly not ideal at all. So hopefully they can try and bounce back from that. And I presume a DSQ would be for going wide and taking a track limit violation. So that's what DSQ is for. And it seems that the Good Luck Coops message from Emma was a kind of a lucky charm then onto pole. So great job from him. And we are going to do a quick... We've had another technical issue, but what we'll do is to rest my voice for a few minutes. We'll have a quick break. Go anywhere, guys. Have the race starting very shortly. And then we'll see what happens around Silverstone. And we are back, guys. Thanks with us, and we can go once again for our qualifying session. I did put a message in the YouTube chat that we will have a restart in qualifying. So we go all again. Ben Cooper has to do his lap once again and go back on pole. And at the moment, it's Craig Bridge, who was one of our drivers that had an issue in the first qualifying session and ended up back of the field. So he seems to have picked up the pace. And as I say, that's then to 7th. I'm sure he'll make his way up to the grid. Yet again, it's Cooper at the top. But we have Cartwright in 2nd, Bill Pott in 3rd. We've got Story as well, still flirting with that top 4. And as well with Harry Phoenix, who qualified 2nd in that initial qualifying session. And there's been a mistake there. Cooper, as he's dropping down the field, he's down to 18th, so that's where he's gone wide and he's suffered from an invalidation potentially. So that is Ben Cooper starting probably at the back of the field, and that is not good considering minutes ago he was on pole position. But of course it will be Harry Phoenix who's quickest. He's still swapping and changing with Thomas Story. We'll see who takes pole through the final line, and it will be Thomas Story with a 1:27.21. And that gap was frighteningly close there between the top two. We'll see shortly what that gap is. And it was 39/1,000ths of a second, even closer than what the gap was between the first qualifying, which was 50,000. So, Story from Phoenix is the top two. Then we have Philpott in third ahead of Packham, the top five. Then we have Robert Pryor, Hamilton Cooper, Carl Nelson, Michael Bentley, and Gary Wilson, the top 10. We have Tommy Dolly, Morgan Stubbs, Oliver Carpenter, Craig James Smith, Luke Barnhurst, John Quirk, Ben Cooper, and Edward George Fleming, the full 19 has been this grid. And yes, it was a DSQ Ben Cooper. So after taking pole, it means he starts in 18th. Not ideal at all for him. And then, of course, still lots of support for Adam Cooper. There's two of them. Adam Cooper in the chat from Emily, George, and A. Kelly. So lots of him. So we'll have to see what he can do heading into the race. It seems like it's the Lewis Hamilton of this. Everybody is supporting him no matter what. And Emily says, so I'm married a winner. That makes sense. It was Adam's wife. So otherwise, that was married to you people. And I hope that's not the case. As Carl Myers says, it's a restart. Let's go. Indeed, Carl. I mean, for those further down, Big Bridge, who went from being last to 7th, for him it's not too bad. But of course, Ben Cooper, he's gone from being on pole down to 18th, and he's not good at all. And what he would not be hoping for heading into this one. It's time to get going for the first of two races here this afternoon. And it's for round 7 of the Ultimate Racing League. Here we are at a great start from the top two, and it's Phoenix that's lead. 3 wide further back to the top 5. That was Cartwright, Philpott, and Packham. They head their way down towards Village Corner, but it's Phoenix takes the lead. It goes wide there for Aidan Philpott, and that allows James Cartwright back third. A bit of contact further back as well. That's Carl Nelson of the fourth place. He's playing around there with the boat. Top in the field. Adam Hamilton Cooper makes the move. He's got 6. Somebody's all the way to the rear there. Either that, the game flipped. Michael Bentley is put down in 2:19 in the field. It's not an ideal black one tip. Of course, Phoenix that lead had a Story Cartwright as it stands. He can as well. Luke Barnhurst will walk up and the battle, and then the same goes to Edward and Oliver Carpenter. Ben Cooper with a superb job. 18th and 19th, up to 8th and 11th. They've had a superb lap one opening lap as Adam Hamilton Cooper's up to 5th place now ahead of Packham. That's brilliant for him to keep extending that gap further ahead as we continue on. And Packham's got back ahead of Cooper, as Cooper's got back ahead of him again. They're side by side through the final corner. Down to turn 1, Adam Hamilton Cooper has got 5th place under his belt, but of course has lost a 6/10 away from that 1 second gap to Carl Nelson, and of course that is not what he needs as Ben Cooper goes for it and makes the move work, as Tom Packham now certainly falling under pressure as a slide there for Aidan Philpott. Into 8th and a penalty for Adam Hamilton Cooper. He takes a 3-second time penalty as we head our way down towards corner again. Ooh, and that's steep for Philpott trying to get ahead of Tom Packham. He stays in P2. Coopers are fighting Ben and Adam as they head their way up towards Woodcut and then down towards Cops. And I think Ben Cooper has got the move complete. A brilliant move after starting 18th after 2 laps. Goes up to P5. As we move through Magnus and Beckett's again with Cooper and Cooper, and of course if Adam can get the DRS here, that will keep him in touch with Ben as they head down towards Stowe and then of course into those final couple of turns, and hope both keep in DRS for when they catch up to Carl Nelson, who's lost that gap between himself and Ben Cooper, as Michael Bentley making some moves after a poor start. He's ahead Luke Barnhurst, as Luke Barnhurst has dropped into 18th below Gary Wilson. And the mistake at the start must have been Tommy Hollies. He's dropped into 19th. James Smith, I think, has had a bit of an incident already. Luke is into the pit lane off of those soft tyres. As we head back in towards Village, it's on board here with Tom Packham. And there are the tyres for the drivers. Two on the mediums, a few, men, he's starting on the softs. And of course, Luke Barnhurst going for a set of hard tyres to the end. So of course, they have to use two compounds. So they can't go medium, medium or soft, soft. They have to make a change. And with the fact we've got only and softs in the field, that tells me it will be a soft medium or a medium soft in terms of their strategy. But of course, we'll see how that plays out late. Normally, at around lap 5, lap 6, you're looking at pitting off of the soft just because they die off quite quickly. On this game, just because of how, well, I don't know why they die off so quickly. I presume it's to do with the lack of rubber on them. And by the time they make it around the circuit a few times, and then unfortunately Tom Packham takes a 3-second penalty. As here's a battle for the Phoenix and Story. And of course, it was a way better line into the corner for Harry Phoenix, and of course just holds off Thomas Story for now, as Edward George Fleming makes a move. He's up into P9 on Quirk, who drops down to 10th. And I think John Quirk also started a little bit further down the field, so great to be up in those top 10 places. And then we look further ahead, and the gaps are starting to increase. So Cartwright is more than a second back from Story. So Story on Phoenix. Ben Cooper's still flirting around that 1 second to James Cartwright. So this could certainly help those that are in the leading spots. Of course, Story doesn't worry about James Cartwright, and as it seems, Harry Phoenix doesn't worry that much about Thomas Story. Of course, things can change very quickly after one or two minor mistakes. As we continue our way on through Luffield now with Phil Potts, as Michael Bentley and the spot made. He's up into 13th. Ahead of Oliver Carpin. Of course, they've got Gary Wilson for company as well. He's trying to make his way up the field and try and get ever closer to that top 10. But of course, penalty-wise, we have 3 sets of 3 out. It's for Adam Hamilton Cooper, Tom Packham and Morgan Stubbs. Of course, that's for track limit exact. 3 times you get a penalty. And Craig Bridge now enters that list as he takes a 3-second beat for track limit violations. As Ben Cooper up into 3rd, he makes a move ahead of James Cartwright, and that is a needed move for him. And I mean, he's definitely showing that he has the pace. It must have been a mistake in quali. Gone from 18th to 3rd in the matter of 5 laps, and I mean that is what nearly 5 positions. That is quite insane there from Ben Cooper. You start to quickly bring that gap down to Thomas Story. He's got some battling going on in that mid pack between Fleming and Morgan Stubbs. They're all trying to find their way through, and I think Packham and Stubbs came to some contact as they're both dropping down the field. Either that, or they've into the pit lane, of course. Because we see the penalties, we can't see if they've gone into it, but I'm assuming that's what's happened for those two. As here's Phil Potts heading in towards Luffield Corner. Of course, you get presented by Cut, a bit of a, well, it's not really much of a corner, it's a bit of a kink to the right, and then of course you head down that national pitch straight, and it's in towards Copse Corner. Of course, all the drivers filing their way through there. And Phil Potts a lot more pace there than Adam Hamilton Cooper. Must have made a mistake, as Phil Potts is all over the of the car as they head their way through Maggots and Beckett, but no move on the cards there for Aidan Phil Potts. He's going to be up, but of course he needs a better opportunity than that one. And of course the thing that harms him is DRS for Cooper, who move ahead of Carl Nelson, and he does make that move into P5. Goes Adam Hamilton Cooper. Nelson's fighting back as they head down towards Vale, and I don't think he was quite alongside enough to go for the move, so Carl Nelson concedes that 5th place and drops P6. As here's James Cartwright getting ahead of Ben Cooper, and I think Ben Cooper into the pit lane as we make our way first couple of corners. And it seems that Ben Cooper's got his own son chanting on for him, Georgie. Shake on Dada, as he pops into the pit lane and it makes his first and hopefully only pit stop in this race. Still, Philpott looking to get ahead of Nelson. This is a battle for fifth here. Aidan Philpott gets gets his first 3-second penalty. Really helps Carl Nelson, the car behind and ahead, has a 3-second disadvantage. So even though Carl doesn't seem to have the pace of Adam Hamilton Cooper, that certainly help him with the penalties, as Philpott just takes that inside line. A superb move, and he definitely took that one perfectly. He's now up into fifth ahead of Carl Nelson. As we make our way through the middle sector here with the two leaders, Harry Phoenix and Thomas Story. Of course, those two have had such an insane first stint, of course, using that DRS to perfection instead of battling, just pulling each other along, and of course extending that gap to James Cartwright, both a set of the mediums. And I think Harry Phoenix there was trying to dummy into the pit lane to trick Thomas Story, but they both continue on as we head on to lap 7 of 13. And of course, everybody in the top 16, I think top 15 still has to pit in this race. Of course, Cooper, Packham, Stubbs and Barnhurst have made their firmly needed pit stops. There's a battle for third, as that's going to be Adam Hamilton Cooper going ahead of, I think that would be one of the pit stops, the top three. That would have been James Cartwright in. Carl Nelson as well, I think, might all be heading in, as we did see a 10-second penalty come through for two drivers. The first one being Craig Bridge, second being Robert Pryor. And of course that is not good for those two. It means the top 10 is pretty much out for them with that penalty. As here is Aidan Philpott looking for a move. Danced it to the inside ahead of Adam Hamilton Cooper. He's gone for the switch back in towards Luffy. Be close to contact. They do make contact. And Aidan Philpott goes through. But both of them, I think, quite scared of what could have potentially gone in towards Luffield. They could have easily both been spun around. But Philpott makes the move ahead of Adam Hamilton Cooper. And he's up into the top three. As we head our way once again. And I'm sure we're going to see more pit stops looking to happen, as Ben Cooper is up to 7th, and that's just because so many drivers have made their pit stops. He's just elevated his way field. As we make our way down towards Stowe Corner once again, and Adam Hamilton Cooper is looking to close in now, unless he goes for the lane, which he does. Into the pits for Hamilton Cooper, as our top two are in the pits. That's Phoenix and Story. So those two have made their first and only pit stops. They'll be onto a set of the soft tyres, as we see Tyron Evans come up, hashtag Carl Nelson, who currently sits in the top 10 in 10th place, and he should make a couple of positions just due to drivers, of course, needing to make their pit stops, as we'll see the gap at the lead later on. And I think Aidan Philpott had taken the lead of the race. Ben Cooper goes into second place, goes ahead of Harry Phoenix, but of course, Philpott's just to make his pit stop in this race with 5 to go. Of course, it's net P1 for Ben Cooper, who's just got ahead of Harry Phoenix. Thomas Story there sitting in 4th/3rd, because of course he's looking to try and get back in S of Phoenix. And of course, soft tyres for Phoenix, I think it's medium tyres strapped on to Cooper, and of course, we all know, first couple of laps of a brand new soft tyre, they are very difficult to battle again. If Harry can close in by the end of next lap, he's probably got to move for the lead complete. But of course, once we get to around lap 11 or lap 12, that's when Ben Cooper's tyres might start to fire up a bit more, just due to that more enduring tyre. As here is Morgan's in P10 currently, with a with a 3-time penalty. That'll drop him down to P11 behind Edward George Fleming, who started at the back of the field. Edward George Fleming in this race. There's John Quirk as well up in the top 9. He's recovered well his qualifying spot in 17th. So we'll have to see what he can do, maybe even make positions. He's got Packham with a 6-second time penalty. He's got Adam Hamilton Cooper ahead with 3 seconds. If he can put some pace down, there could be a chance for him, as Aidan Philpott from the lead heads into the pit lane. So the top 3, Cooper, Phoenix and Thomas Story, really closed in now to the back of Harry Phoenix. So you're thinking at one point maybe Phoenix has got a top 2 covered, but Thomas Story is there for the taking potentially. You see DRS will be open now down Brooklands. So we navigate the Wellington Straight. See if anybody enough to make a move. No, not just yet. As Thomas Story there, he's on his way up in towards Luffield, clogging on the back of Harry Phoenix. And then they head through Woodcote Corner down towards Cops. Of course, there's no DRS down here, but there is battery that you can use down this section, and you can see a blinking rear light on Harry Phoenix, and that tells us got his mode, which means he's using none of that ERS battery, which would be that Thomas Story has 30% of through that section of track there. So if it's a blue light, they're not using any power or any battery at least. Of course, they've got their engine power, just not their electric battery power. As we all close up again in towards Stowe Corner, and this battle for the lead is definitely raging on between Cooper, Phoenix and Story, as that's going to be Adam Hamilton Cooper making a move. He's up ahead of Tom Payne to P5 for him. It's a brilliant move, and of course doesn't really affect Adam Hamilton Cooper either way, just become Packham's second penalty that he received a couple of laps ago, and of course that brings Carl Nelson into contention here for P5, because in 3 seconds of Adam Hamilton Cooper, and he's within 6 seconds of Tom Pack. So Carl Nelson, top 5 is certainly on the cards here, as of course James will be looking to lock out a P4 finish. He's got such a big gap behind. And then of course the top 3, as long as they stakes, they're certain on those podium finishes. As here is Aidan Philpott, of course, went into the pit up. He went very late on his strategy, a big overcut. He's now looking for a move ahead of Carl Nelson. Of course, he's got to get done, but then he's got to stretch 3 seconds out on Carl Nelson just because of his 3-second time penalty. So Carl's got to really just keep that pace down, keep Aidan within 3 seconds of him. And there we go. It's going to be another position for him potentially. As Gary Wilson, head of Robert Pryor in P15, he makes that move. And then here we keep an eye on the top 3 again. Kenny is close enough to make a move, unless it's a late dart to the inside. It could have been a late dart to the inside, as Harry Phoenix is looking to hold off from Story. And it's surprising to see that the driver, who's against a car with no DRS and hard tyres, is suffering more to a car with the same advantage of DRS and the set of tyres. So Harry Phoenix will keep his eye more behind than he has ahead on many occasions here, as we head on to lap 11 of 13. 2 to go, 1. And Ben Cooper, remember, started 18th. He did make a mistake in his qualifying lap. If he qualified on pole, he'd probably be shooting up the road by a few seconds by now, because of course in that first session that we had, the restart did take pole. I think it was by a couple of tenths as well to Harry Phoenix, who was ahead of Thomas Story. So the top 3 is pretty much the same as what in our qualifyings here. Let's make our way out of Woodcote and down towards Cops again, and we'll see if Cooper comes under any sort of pressure, but I'm starting to think that won't be the case, because Phoenix and Story needed to make their moves on that initial first 2 laps of the stints. Now soft tyres are going to overheat, they're going to start to wear more, so they won't really have much of an advantage here on Cooper. The only way now they can get the lead is by a mistake for Cooper. So Edward George Fleming makes his way through Cops Corner. So he makes his way down towards Maggots and Beckett. He's up at 10 as John Quirk we switch over to. He's a couple of seconds ahead of George Fleming, as he makes a slight mistake. Chapel, he should still have a decent enough gap to keep the top 9 as Aidan Philpott makes ahead of Tom Packham. And here we see Carl Nelson, who's looking to bring that down again. And at the moment, P6 is on the cards, just due to penalties up the road, as that was Philpott, I think, making a bit of a mistake. It was a heavy mistake, because look how quick Tom Packham has closed him in, and Tom's going to use all battery power down to turn 1 to have a good run in towards Farm Kirburn Village, but it's not going to be quite enough there to lunge ahead and go overtaking move. But of course we are on the penultimate lap of race, lap 12 of 13, and it's Ben Cooper that leads comfortably ahead of Harrix and Thomas Story, with James Cartwright and the very supported Hamilton Cooper sitting in 5th place. Of course, with the gap back to Carl Nelson being around 5 seconds. He should keep that P5 as long as he doesn't make another mistake. Because here is Thomas Story now. He's probably got 2 chances to make a move here. You've got Stowe in around 20 seconds time, and then you've probably got Stowe on the last lap. Apart from that, you've not really got many opportunities to make a move. But I'm sure with the pace that Ben Cooper's got, he knows that he's got to keep that battery high for when Harry Phoenix starts to close in. He's definitely got the intelligence for that. So even though Harry Phoenix is also sitting there battery, he's not going to get an advantage because Ben Cooper is doing the exact same thing. As we head our way through Club Corner to begin lap 3 of this race, the final lap for Ben Cooper, Harry Phoenix and Thomas Story to claim their podiums. As we head our way back down towards Village Corner, and Cooper's led a brilliant so far, but Harry Phoenix is all over the back of him now towards the loop and Aintree. Is there still a possible lap chance here for Harry Phoenix? He's got that DRS open now down towards Brockman's Corner. He's going to close in. Don't think it's quite enough. No, he's turned the battery off because he'd rather keep it and go for it again, as James Cartwright's a 3-second time penalty. And I'm sure this one could go down to the line because Harry Phoenix is really putting some pace down on this final lap of racing. As Craig Bridge also takes a 3-second time penalty, and that gap comes down to 2/10 as we head our way through Copse Corner. He goes wide, Harry Phoenix, but he rejoins. He's lost a lot of time there. That gap is back down to 4.5 tenths. As we head through Maggots and Beckett's one last time. I don't think there's anything he can do to destroy Ben Cooper. That gap has gone way too high there through Maggots and Beckett and Chapel, and I don't think it will be close enough either. So it seems this could be it for this race. After qualifying in FQ, Ben Cooper will be making his way toward the Val Chicane and then in towards Club Corner to take another win here in the Armed Forces Racing League and the win of 7th round of the series, and he's got a very big advantage now heading into the final round in Abu Dhabi late. And we still have a battle down for P8 and P9 between John Quirk and Carl Nelson as they head their way through. That's a big send indeed from Carl Nelson. It was never the send, but at least he went for it either way. John Quirk will finish in P8 ahead of Carl, who will go ahead because of penalties. So it's Tom Packham who read the top 10. And of course, back up at the top, Cooper, Phoenix, Story. And of course, Phoenix and Story qualified 2nd and 3rd in the initial quali, then 1st and 2nd. So I'm sure they'll be very annoyed that they allowed Ben Cooper to get ahead, considering he started down in 18th. As all the cars cross the line, that was a very exciting ending with the battle for the lead. We had a very big send from Carl Nelson. I mean, in the real world, you get a penalty for that, but I think it's brilliant. I think you might as well go for the move. What have you got to lose in that position? As we see the podium now be celebrated for our winners and our podium sitters of this. And of course, it was Ben Cooper. 18th to 1st. I mean, that is a race and a half indeed. And of course, heading into Abu Dhabi in around 4's time, he has a very big opportunity to crown himself the winner of the Armed Forces Racing, which I'm sure he'd love to do, especially considering because Lionel is there at the Williams Esports Lounge. And you never know, maybe he'll pick himself an F1 seat up for teams. We'll have to see. But there we go. And I mean, he took a Grand Slam in the accolades there as well. All 4 went to Ben Cooper. But let's have a look at the race result. And fastest lap goes to Cooper ahead of Harry Phoenix and Thomas Storm. Rounding off the podium, then we had James Cartwright and Adam Hamilton Cooper, the top 5, ahead of Ed and Phil Potts, John Quirk, Edward George Fleming and Tom Packham, the top 10. Then we had Michael Bentley, Morgan, Tommy Darley, Oliver Carpenter, Gary Wilson, James Smith, Barnhurst, Robert Pryor and Craig Bridge, the top 19, and the full classification of that first and, well, in the championship, the 7th race of the Armed Forces Racing League, and that was a brilliant start off the morning. But of course, we're not done there. We have, however, the 4-hour break. We'll be back at around 4 p.m, where we take on Abu Dhabi, where we crown our Armed Forces Racing League champion. And of course, make sure, guys, to go somewhere now because we've got a big break. But make sure you're back in around 4 hours' time, where we can see who will take championship on the 8th and final round of the Armed Forces Racing League. I've been Nathan Richards. You've been a brilliant audience. We'll be about 4 hours' time. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you later on.